Satri wa yasiri amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Welcome everybody to our Sunday talk. First of all, like praise to Allah, the most precious, the most gracious, and also salawat for our role model Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Welcome everybody to our Sunday talk. Alhamdulillah, our professor is here. So today we are going to discuss very interesting topic, the Great Deception, social science. Okay, let me greeting our professor here. Assalamualaikum, Prof. Asad.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay, how are you, Prof?
Alhamdulillah, I'm fine.
Alhamdulillah. Okay. Thank you so much for joining this, for giving us opportunity to learn more about this topic. I welcome everybody who are already joined the Zoom. This also have a live streaming program in our YouTube channel. So for information, this is a program, the Sunday Talk is program hosted by the Ghazali Project Indonesia's team. And we are going to make this session, inshallah, regularly, monthly discussion. So you are welcome to set your calendar to attend this monthly discussion, inshallah. I'm going to, so before I hand over this platform, I would like to introduce our professor, our lecturer, Professor Dr. Asad Zaman, graduated Bachelor in Mathematics from MIT and Statistics from Stanford and Ph.D. Economics from Standford. He's currently the director of Uloom Umran and from the Al-Nafi education platform. So today, I assume that those who are joining this Zoom platform already read the prerequisite reading and also 1 hour lecture they already given by our professor. So it's already discussed about the dazzle of Western knowledge, the title of the prerequisite course. So hopefully by having those introduction, you are more ready to attend this session so that you can later join the discussion, inshallah. Those who have a question, you can post your question in the chat box, or later on after 1 hour lecture, we can have a question and answer session, inshallah. So without further ado, I will hand over the platform to our professor. The platform is your, Prof.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So today's we will go through some. Actually, we will explain why social science is a great deception. It is not at all a science like the word claims. And we will discuss the foundations of knowledge and how Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi solved the central problem of what is knowledge. But this message was not understood by Western intellectuals who tried to imitate his ideas but failed. And so they're still stuck in the same place where Imam Ghazali already solved the problem. So, before I start, let me just say that the basic thesis that we are working with in this Ghazali project is that the Ummah, the central problem of the Ummah is shock and awe of Western intellectual achievements. We think that West has tremendous knowledge, and therefore we say, okay, if I need help, I will ask it from the West instead of from the Quran. So the goal of our work in the Ghazali project is to do the tahafut al-falasifa, reject Western ideas and Western philosophy, and show that these are stupid mistakes, not sophisticated wisdom that we must learn in order to improve our lives. It's just stupid mistakes. And that's the basic goal of this session, to show that Western social science is just a stupid mistake. Okay, so that's so now I will start, inshallah, by sharing my screen and get the slideshow. Right. Okay, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We are going to explain why social science is not what it is supposed to be. There are two basic problems. Social science claims to be a science, which means it's like physical science. They have laws and regulations, but social science is the study of human beings, and human beings don't follow laws and mathematical they don't have mathematical rules for behavior. Also, social science is a study of societies, so it cannot apply to all societies. Actually, it's based on study of European historical experience, and it applies in some way to the European experience. So there are multiple obviously false ideas which are part of social science. And so we start by noting that this is not something new that I'm saying. Many Western thinkers have already said this and pointed out deep flaws in social sciences already. So I'm going to go through a list of some of those people who have seen the problem with Western social science. So one of them is Peter Winch. And basically, Peter Winch in this book, he says that when you study human behavior, then you have to look at human motivations. And human motivations have to do with groups. And if you try to make up rules of social behavior, then these depend on the society you're operating in. There are no universal rules. So basically, the idea that you can write down what human beings will do in given situations, this is false. There is no such rule, because you have to determine which society he is living in, what is the social norms of that society. And even more difficult than that, when we talk about rules of human behavior, one of the rules that societies follows is how we are going to acquire knowledge. So this is very important. That is, in a society, there are certain ways in which we go about learning. So our way is that we learn from the mother, and we learn in the school, and then we go to university. So these are some ways of acquiring knowledge. But these ways can change. So when we study human societies, then this is part of the social production of knowledge. So it's not like, you see, if the electron wants to study itself, it has to think about its mental state. That doesn't happen. Electron is never studying itself. We can study electrons, and our study of the electrons will not change, will not affect the behavior of the electron. And the electron follows laws. But this same methodology cannot be used for social science. So it's a fairly obvious idea that societies are different from particles. And so so the way we study physics is not the way we should study human societies. The reason that this idea started was that somewhere in the 19th century, there was an enormous amount of progress in the study of the physical sciences. So a great ambition and hope was generated in European societies that maybe human psychology can be reduced to a study of biology. And biology can be studied by studying chemistry, what happens in the cells and the synapses and the neurons. And chemistry can be reduced to physics. And ultimately, everything can be explained to physics. So the idea that science can explain everything, this was born. Even though it's a stupid idea, And this was supported by the idea of Newton's laws, because according to Newton's laws, everything is deterministic, and every particle has a law of motion, and that it follows that from beginning of time to end of time. So if everything in the universe is a material, then everything can be predicted just from the laws of physics. Of course, there are two big problems. One is that Newton's laws may not apply to everything at all times. And the other problem is that there may be non-material substances. In fact, physics even shows that there are dark matter and there are many other things which exist in the universe about which we don't know what their properties are. So all of this means that this idea that everything can be reduced to physics is just absurd. All right, so now I'm going to go through a number of books which explain this issue. All of them make the argument that social science is based on wrong foundations. This book by Philip Mirowski just talks about economics, not social science in general. But basically what he says is that in the 19th century, when economics was being built on mathematical foundations, the economists simply copied the equations of physics and then they imitated them, and they said, okay, this is how we're going to do economics. These equations are going to apply. The equation for potential and for energy and for motion, these are the laws that we are going to apply to study human societies. So it was just a copy, word by word, letter by letter. And this is really mind-boggling, because laws of physics don't apply to human behavior. But that's how economics was constructed. And if you look at the Samuelson's book on the foundations, the mathematical foundations of economics, you will see this approach displayed. And Samuelson is actually considered the founder of modern economics. So basically, he uses a mathematical physics approach. And this is just ridiculous. It's nonsense. And many people have noticed that this is true. All right. A deeper book is by Michel Foucault. And this goes into another explanation of why social science is based on wrong ideas. And he says that basically, whenever we build any kind of knowledge, social science is a kind of knowledge that a society is building. It is always built on some foundations. These foundations, which he calls epistemes, are the grounding basis. And these ground bases are not challenged, not open to question, not open to discussion. We have talked in previous lectures about the axiomatic method which came into being with Christianity, that you start with some assumptions like 1 equals 3, Jesus is God, God is God, God is 1, but God is also 3. But all of these things have to be taken for granted. These are given axioms. We do not question them, we do not discuss them, we do not argue whether these can be resolved. These are all taken as background. Similarly, so that is the episteme for Christianity. So similarly, the social sciences are built on certain hidden assumptions. And basically, what you can say about it is that the main idea of Foucault here is that modern human sciences offered universal scientific truths. They say that we are saying universal scientific truths, but actually it's just an ethical and political commitment of a society. This is how we do things here. It's not about a science, it's about making commitment. that we are going to have democracy, we are going to have free markets, and so on. So this is not a science, it's actually a religion. All right, Peter Manikas, he has also a very deep insight. What he says is that he studies how social science emerged, and he comes to a very interesting conclusion. He says that modern social science emerged in early 20th century. And when we study economics, they say, oh, it goes back to Samuelson and it has 3 centuries, but actually the current shape of economics and all of the social sciences emerged in early 20th century. And the reason for this is very interesting. Basically, physics acquired a huge amount of prestige with the discoveries of Newton, and humanities was being neglected and ignored, and it was suggested this is not really knowledge when we compare it to physics. So in the late 19th century, the social scientists decided to make their discipline more mathematical, more quantitative, and more like physics. So what happened in the early 20th century was that the logical positivists came and they said that this is what science is. They said that science operates in a certain way, which is called logical positivism. This understanding of science was wrong. But based on this wrong understanding, the social sciences were constructed that, okay, this is what science is, according to the positivists, and this is how we will do social science. So based on a misunderstanding of what science is, all of the social science was constructed. And so now in the middle 20th century, in the 60s and 70s, the philosophers realized that logical positivism is a wrong philosophy. That's not how science works. So in the light of this discovery, it would have been necessary to rebuild the foundations of the social sciences, but nobody ever went and did that. So currently also the social sciences are built on the wrong foundations, the positivist foundations. Timothy Mitchell, he also says more or less the same thing, that if you look at the possibility of social science, what is social science? I mean, social science is a set of laws which tells us how the society will work. How can you get this law? Well, you get this law by looking at how European society works. So is it possible that the European societies, the laws which operate in European society work for all societies? No. What he says is that you take as certain things, certain forms, certain patterns of European society in the 19th century were taken as the template for a universal knowledge that, okay, everyone will have constitutions, everyone will have open markets, everyone will have certain methods of trade, people will have certain types of laws, certain rules for property, etc., etc., etc. So all of these things were built into the foundations. They are never discussed openly. If you study your economics textbook, it doesn't mention the laws governing private property because it's all taken in the background. It's assumed to be true without any discussion. Immanuel Wallerstein, also he has written this book that social science, it's not possible to modify, to reform it. You have to unthink it. It is a set of false thoughts, and you just have to discard it and start all over. And why? He says that basically it was built on 19th century ideas. In particular, some key ideas are development and progress. The idea that societies, are becoming better and better, and we are growing and we are improving. All of these ideas are highly contested. In fact, they have been contested. In fact, this is one of the fundamental ideas that governs Western intellectual formations of social sciences, that we are continuously improving. If you study where this idea comes from, you find that it comes from the loss of faith in Christianity. So Christianity promised people heaven, and that was the great thing Now, after the promise of heaven was lost, then mankind decided to construct heaven on earth. So the idea was that we will try to improve our society and eventually make it a heaven on earth. So this is where the idea of progress comes from. But actually, if you look at human condition, it has not progressed. Things have gotten bad and worse. This is contrary to the one of the central conceptions of modern social science, that things are improving and we can improve human societies. Whereas, in fact, not only has this not happened, but the opposite has happened. Finally, there is this book by Brian Epstein called The Ant Trap. And this book discusses, again, rebuilding the foundations of the social sciences. What is his problem? He says that when you study group behavior, this is one of the insights of Ibn Khaldun, that if you want to study society, you have to look at the behavior of communities. You have to look at social bonding. Social bonding creates communities. And in social sciences, you have to study the behavior of communities. You cannot do it by studying individuals. And this is one of the fundamental mistakes in economics and more generally in social sciences. This is called methodological individualism. They say that if you want to study a society, you just have to look at all of the people in that society, and you add up the behavior of all the people, you get to social behavior. This is what Margaret Thatcher said. There is no society, there is just individuals which make up the society. So Brian Epstein says this is wrong. If you want to study the group behavior, it does not reduce to the individual behavior. If you have a group of Pakistanis, you cannot study the behavior of every single individual Pakistani and then deduce from this how the group as a whole will behave. And so concepts which are valid at the group level cannot be translated to concepts of individual level and vice versa. And so this is why when you want to study society, you can't follow the methodological individualism that is part of the standard approach to social sciences. Finally, there is this book by Jeffrey Hodgson, which basically talks about the Methodist strike, the battle of methodology, which took place in the late 19th century. Originally, economics and all of social science was actually a branch of history. We study how human societies evolved through time, just like Ibn Khaldun. But then, as I already discussed earlier, there was this idea that we can do a better job, we can improve our study of societies by applying mathematics and laws of physics and the methodology of science. And so this original correct approach based on history was lost and replaced by this mathematical and quantitative approach, which is currently dominant, especially in economics. So one of the key issues that arises when you study human history is that how do we generalize? Suppose I say that, okay, the Great Depression took place. So this is just an historical event. How can we find out from this the laws which will create depression? A huge number of different things happen. So I have to extract the right things, the things that were the important factors and the things that were not relevant factors. And even if I can extract them, can I apply these factors in different times? So this is called the problem of historical specificity. If I study history, there is nothing I can learn from it until I make rules to abstract and study patterns. And there is no methodology known which will tell us what these rules are, how we can study history and extract lessons which are valid for times different from the original historical time. So this is a special problem for study of social science. How can I learn, if I look at a society, look at European society, can I find from this a law which will apply to other societies at different times? Nobody actually knows the answer to this question, but this question is not even raised in modern social science. So again, this is a serious problem for the study of social science, that the central questions are not even considered or discussed They are buried in the background. So ultimately, actually, there are huge and elementary blunders in the foundations of social sciences, and we will be discussing some of them. For example, economics starts with the assumption that all rational human beings maximize the pleasure obtained from consumptions of goods and services. This is the foundation of modern economic theory, and it's completely wrong. It's bogus. This is not true empirically, and there's a huge amount of evidence for this. And this is not true normatively. This is not something people should try to do, because consuming goods and services doesn't really give us pleasure. Pleasure we can get from loving, being loved, being involved in social activities, from generosity, from kindness, from gratitude. So these are the ideas of economics about our behavior are just completely false and absurd. Similarly, political science is based on Machiavellian ideas that morality doesn't matter, you should just do whatever you need to do in order to get the maximum amount of power. So economic theory is built on the idea that when you look at international trade, that I will try to get advantage from you and you will try to take advantage of me. But what about the idea of a civilization where we try to help each other? This doesn't exist in Western methodology. So even when Huntington wrote his Clash of Civilization, he said, the period of wars is gone. Nations will not be making wars against each other. But now we have civilizations and they will be always fighting each other. Why? Can't you imagine the idea that people are civilized and they cooperate and they live together in harmony and peace, as Islam teaches us? So basically, there are some very, very elementary misconceptions which are foundational, which are at the basis of Western social science, and which are causing enormous amount of harm to humanity today. So how did the state of affairs arise? How did people build knowledge on such absurd and ridiculous foundations? Today, I'm going to trace the story of this. And this has to do a lot with Imam al-Ghazali and how he approached the whole problem of knowledge. So today, we are going to look at the most fundamental problem that faces us when we try to acquire knowledge. And that is, how can we know anything at all? So I'm going to start by thinking about Descartes and his historical context. At that time in Europe, everything that they knew for sure was true had broken down. So basically, Christianity had shattered into Catholicism and Protestantism. And people were saying that, okay, so something that everybody had believed for a long time, for centuries, turns out not to be true. This is a big shock. It's called the trauma of loss of faith. Again, scientific discoveries, which they had borrowed from Islamic civilization, were coming in and they were changing the picture of the world. They had believed that the planet Earth was at the center of the universe, but they found out, no, it's just a small planet and the sun is at the center. The society was changing rapidly. There was feudalism was disappearing and city-states were emerging. So everything that people knew was changing. So in this period of flux and change and uncertainty, the people said, okay, what can we be sure of? Where is the place to build our knowledge from? Because previously, everything that we believed to be true has turned out to be false. So the epistemology, the idea that epistemology is the study of knowledge, this became very important. How do we know anything? And there were two basic approaches that were developed in Europe. One of them was the approach of the empiricists, who said that knowledge comes from senses. I look at things, I touch things, I feel things, I can taste things. So basically the five senses give me knowledge. And the rationalists said that knowledge comes thinking, from reason. As we will see, both of these ideas are wrong, and both of these were rejected by Imam al-Ghazali. But today, the West is still stuck in the same problem, that neither empiricism nor neither reason nor senses give us knowledge, but they have no other options. And so they're still stuck at a problem which Imam al-Ghazali solved centuries ago. So one of the philosophers said that fear is a necessary conditioner for rationality. What did he mean by that? He said that, look, we are living this unique life. We have only this one chance. All of us will die. So how to live well, this is a question of central importance. But how do we know how to live well? He says that, this is a Western philosopher, he says that, contemporary, he says that, it's actually Stephen something or the other, I forgot the name. He said that there is no user's manual. I have this life, but I have no user's manual. He's saying that because he doesn't have the Quran. So what can he say? He doesn't have a user's manual. He says, so now, how should I behave? Now, it's a matter of enormous importance. If I accept Christianity and this turns out to be the right thing, then I will achieve Jannah. But if it's wrong, then I will achieve Jahannam. So everything depends on what I do, but I don't know how to learn what should I do? How can I figure out how to live? This is the central question, and there are no answers. And how can I, and even if I search for knowledge, I look through the books, there are too many, millions of books. Even if, as a Muslim, I have a problem that the books of our tradition are so vast that even if I devote all my life to studying, I will only be able to study maybe less than 1% of all the books that have been written in the Islamic civilization. Forget about the human heritage. So how can I find knowledge? And if I don't find knowledge, then I will waste my life. So this is what the fear is about, that if I don't search for knowledge, and if I don't find it, then I will be in very bad shape. So he says that this is a condition of life, and the solution that human beings have found for it is a very simple one. They said, okay, we'll take some very simple set of beliefs. We will say that these are the axioms, and I will trust them and I believe in them blindly. I will not investigate, because the problem of investigation is too difficult to solve. If I say, okay, I'm going to start from scratch and I'm going to think through everything and I'm going to verify everything, you will never make any advance. Just think, suppose that we said that, okay, you don't know any mathematics. Now you're going to start from scratch and rediscover mathematics. Do you think you could get to the quadratic equation? And that's only in grade school mathematics. Do you think you could rediscover calculus? Of course not. It has taken centuries and centuries to discover these things. So we say, we put you at scratch. We say, you know nothing about how to live. Now just rediscover this on your own. You can't do it. So since we cannot learn the rules for living, the strategy that we adopt in order to avoid the fear is that we say, okay, I'm going to just accept, I'm going to grab a few ideas that I pick up from the background, and I'm going to say, these are certain, and I'm not going to question these ideas. And these ideas may be wrong, like Trinity, or other ideas like the Christian definition of zuhud, that life is about denying yourself all pleasure, torturing yourself for the sake of Allah, and so on. So these ideas may be taken as my basic and foundational ideas, and I will never question them, and I will say, okay, this is certain. So basically, Descartes, who was known as the father of Western philosophy, he wrote a book called First Philosophy. And he said basically that we are in a strange situation here in the West, that all of our knowledge has been built on wrong ideas. So we must start all over again from zero. So how can I get to the first truth? And then once I get to one truth, I will take small and sure steps to build on this knowledge that I have learned. So basically the idea is that he gave the example of rotten apples, that if you have a whole barrel of apples, but a few of them are rotten, then they will spread this rot to all the other apples. So now what do we need to do? We need to pick out those rotten apples. But it's not a good idea to search through the barrel to find which apple is rotten, because we might miss one. So he said, instead, let's just empty the barrel, take out all of the apples, throw them out, and then pick up each apple one by one and examine it and say, oh, this is good. So then put it back in the barrel. So this is the idea of the first philosophy. So he said that this leads to the methodology of doubt. When we take any idea, then we say that, is this sound? Is this a rotten apple or is this a good apple? So we doubt it, that we say that, okay, this is not good and I'm going to try to argue against it. And if you can't find a good argument, then you say, okay, this idea is sound, so I will accept it, and you build like that. So we start from the fundamentals. Who am I? Is this world around me, is it real or is it just imagination? Is this life experience of mine a dream or is it the truth? So basically, then he goes to reason, and he says that, well, reason gives us mathematics and some ideas which seem to be certainty. But even that certainty can be doubted, because somebody who is a genius, he might be leading me to think the wrong things and logic in the wrong directions. But even if I'm thinking wrongly or if I'm thinking rightly, in any case, I'm thinking. So thought itself is there. And if thought is there, then the thinker is also there. So I exist. So this is the famous Descartes argument that I think, therefore I am. Descartes said that this method of doubt cannot be applied to all ideas and should not be applied by all people. And we will get to that and explain why. So I've proven that I exist. Well, that doesn't really get us very far, because we already knew that. So how am I going to build the whole structure of knowledge out of this? So Descartes switches to the second argument. And the second argument is that, okay, I exist, but what caused me to come into existence? So something else, maybe you can say that my parents caused me to come into existence. Well, then who caused my parents to come into existence? And who caused this whole universe to come into existence? Ultimately, if you follow the chain of causes, you will get back to God. So basically, Descartes argued that God is the first cause, and he caused everything to come into existence. And because God is good, he is not a deceiver. So then I can trust my senses. So if I see something is there, and God gave me the sense, and God gave me this eyes, then because I know I trust in God, so what I'm seeing is the truth. So now once you can trust your senses and you can trust your logic, then you can rebuild knowledge. And so this is basically the argument of Descartes. Now I'm going to go through a comparison. We have already argued in previous ideas that everything, the fundamental philosophies of Europe have been borrowed from the Islamic tradition. And there is a huge debate. Many people have said that Descartes basically copies the arguments of Imam al-Ghazali, which he has given in Al-Munqidh min al-Dalalah. And this seems very likely, but the point that I'm trying to make is somewhat different. Of course, he copied, but the copyist doesn't understand the original. This is the key. So today I'm going to, this is the main part of the lecture. I'm going to go through the arguments of Ghazali and Descartes in parallel and explain what Descartes got and what he missed. So, um, basically, we start with the method of doubt, which both of them say in almost exactly the same way. Ghazali says that if I want to, he starts by describing how he got confused about many things and how about different people are arguing in different ways. And if a child is Christian, he says that I start with, I believe I am in Islam, but I see a Christian child believes in Christianity and a Jewish child believes in Judaism. So this belief is not evidence for the truth. So how can I find something which is certain? So I want to find something about which I can be completely sure. And so here, the passages from Ghazali and Descartes, they are quite similar. So he starts by saying that when you start doubting, this is an experience. You see, when you start to doubt, it comes from an experience because you see that what you used to believe by habit is not true. So now you search for something which comes from knowledge and not from custom and not from tradition. And so basically he says that he experienced doubt. He describes his experience. So Descartes has the same things, that both of them say the same thing, that I found that the traditional knowledge that I had acquired by memory was just ignorance. So Ghazali says that taqleed, which is blind following of others, is not the path to knowledge. Because if we are just borrowing opinions of others, this does not give us knowledge. And once you realize that the opinion that I have, that this such and such thing is true, is not my opinion at all, I'm just borrowing the idea, then this is taqleed. So we have to understand who we are following, why we are following, and whether or not we should follow. And that is knowledge, that which is different from taqleed. And basically Descartes says the same thing, that the previous education was just a collection of errors that I copied, and a way of learning of my ignorance. Okay, so once you learn that you are ignorant and that everything that you have been taught may be wrong, then you start by this methodology of doubt. So he said that maybe you can trust your senses. Maybe if I look at something, then I can believe that it is what it is. Then Ghazali says that if I look at a star, it looks like a very small thing. But when I study the science of it, I realize that it's a huge thing and it is even bigger than the Earth planet. So that is in 1000. The people in the Islamic civilization knew that the stars were huge and not small points in the sky. Descartes goes through the same type of argument. He says that we cannot trust our senses because we have often been mistaken. We saw something that was there, like the illusion of water in the desert or many other illusions. I show something, but they are not certain. So we should not trust those things which have deceived us. So then Ghazali says that, well, can I trust my reason? And he says, no, even the reason might be wrong. I might be led to illogical conclusions. And so Ghazali writes about how he fell into despair. He said that when I realize that I can believe in nothing for certain, my senses are not sure and my logic is not sure, then he fell sick. And he said that, how can I reason out of this? He says that senses are not available and logical arguments are not available. So there is no method which I can use to find anything. Now, this is where we come into a difference with Descartes. A key thing is that Ghazali is describing his life experience. He actually experienced this doubt and he actually fell sick. And if you look at the biography, you see that he said that I tried to lecture, but no words would come out of my mouth. So he actually experienced doubt. But Descartes is saying he's just doing an intellectual exercise. He's not describing his own personal experience. And in fact, at some point he says that this doubt, it's a story I'm telling to illustrate some ideas. It is not a genuine life experience. And he says that you cannot really question everything. It's not possible. We should look at some key beliefs and make sure that these are right. So what he's saying, which he's copying from Ghazali, is not actually the full extent of what Ghazali was saying. And it was not an experience, it was an intellectual argument. This is of great importance for what follows. So what does Ghazali says? Ghazali says that Allah Ta'ala eventually cured my sickness and he gave me health, and it did not come from arguments, it did not come from logic, and it did not come from the senses, it did not come from proof, because he has already shown that these things are wrong. You cannot use proofs, you cannot use logic, you cannot use senses. And so both the British empiricist school and the continental rationalist schools, he has rejected both of them. So he has no path to knowledge. So where is knowledge going to come from? He says it's because of the nur which Allah Ta'ala put into my heart, and that nur is the key to all knowledge. So this is very important. Now, what does Descartes do? Descartes does not have access to nur. He actually had an illegitimate child by some servant, so we can see that the nur of Islam had not reached to Europe. So what does he say? He says that, well, he starts by saying that, okay, I think, therefore I am. So now what is this? This is logic. But we have already said that logic is not trustworthy. And the assumptions that you make in the logic, they are not certain. So he is using a circular argument. He is using something which is, he's arguing that everything can be doubted. But then he is saying that no, if you say everything is in doubt, then what does it mean to think? And what does it mean to exist? All of these words, these are questions that you have to ask. But you can't ask these questions because you have nothing to stand on. So starting from zero, you cannot get to any place. And that is the correct position which Imam Ghazali took. But Descartes could not. Imam Ghazali got out of this problem by saying that Allah Ta'ala put nur in my heart, and that resolved my certainty. But Descartes just ignores this problem, and he says, okay, from zero, I will just say that I think, therefore I exist. And many people noticed this problem and argued against him and said that when you're saying that you doubt everything, then you have to also doubt whether or not you think, and you have to doubt whether or not you exist. When you say, so the argument is circular. Descartes' argument, which is the foundation of Western philosophy, is circular. It doesn't work. And the problem is that Western philosophy, to this day, they have not resolved this dilemma. They have no certain basis for knowledge. The argument of Descartes is wrong. Currently, if you study philosophy, you say that there are three methods for learning, for acquiring knowledge. One is deduction. So that comes from logic. But where does this come from? It comes from, you have some premises. These are the axioms which you're not supposed to question. And then you can build. That's what reason can do. But where do you get those certain axioms? Those axioms about which you can be sure. The problem is that there are no axioms that are sure. And in fact, if you study social science deeply, we will do that in later lectures. you find that they are using axioms which are false, just like the Trinity, and just like the idea that Europe is the best society in the world and it is the ideal model for all other societies to follow. These are axioms of Western social science. So they are assumed without question. They are not subject to discussion. They are not subject to doubt. They are not subject to disagreement. So this is the serious problem at the foundation, that you don't have any certain knowledge. You assume some things and you assume them to be true, but these are falsehood. Then there are two other methods which occur in science. One is induction. You look at a sequence of facts, like you see that the sun rises every day and you say, okay, it will continue to rise. But the induction argument is also not a way to get to certainty. Somebody said that, the chicken, it sees every day that these people, or even in the for the Eid al-Adha, there is this goat, and every day it sees that the people feed it. But then it does the induction argument that they will keep feeding me forever, but one day it finds out differently. And then there's the third methodology, which is called abduction, which is, say, you find something which is a mystery, and then you try to find an explanation by guessing at the explanation. But that's the only thing you can do. Like, when an apple falls, you guess that it is the force of gravity, the invisible force of gravity, which is pulling it down. But this is just a guess, and there is no way to be sure because you can't see this gravity. So none of the methods known to Western philosophy lead to certain knowledge, but they pretend that this is certain. And why do they pretend it is certain? We already discussed earlier. This is to avoid the fear that arises. If you say that nothing is certain, then you are in a deep problem, because then you'd say, I don't know how to live my life. And then you have to face the problem that maybe you will waste your life if you don't have knowledge about how to live. So Western philosophy asserts that knowledge must be certain. The theory of knowledge that they have is called JTB, justified true belief. Something is knowledge if you believe it, and if it is true, and if you can prove that it is true. So this is the very high standard of knowledge. Unfortunately, what Imam al-Ghazali showed us was that there is no such knowledge. We must live with uncertainty. And this is something that the West has not learned how to do. And so they pretend that the knowledge that they have is true and certain and provable, when this is not true. So this is the fundamental flaw at the foundations of modern social science. And this flaw was pointed out by Imam al-Ghazali 1,000 years ago. So Imam al-Ghazali explains that there are certain things which cannot be discovered by logic and senses. And these are the certainties of the heart and the soul. And these are experienced, these are not knowable, these are not even describable. When I experience the illumination, the nur of Allah in my heart, I cannot explain what this is and what I experience, and I cannot talk about it even. And that's what he says, that there are some things which you cannot talk about. But once you have this experience, then knowledge can be built on top of this experience. So our soul longs for truth. We are born with the searching for truth. We look to find, how can I learn the truth? We seek knowledge, and we have standards of justice. If I see zulm being done, my heart revolts against it. And it's very interesting that even babies they have done experiments on babies, and they show them somebody doing zulm to others, and the baby's heart responds to this. And you can find that they don't like this. We are born with this idea of what is good and what is bad. And so the Ghazali talks about the sense judge, the senses, the eyes, and the British empiricists. They look at things and they say, oh, this is true. But the reason judge can overrule the sense judge. The senses tell us that this star, it's a very small thing, But when you use your logic and reason and astronomy and facts, then you see that, oh, stars are very, very big. They only appear small to us because they are very far away. But the reason judge can also be wrong. And the third judge, which is the on top of the reason judge, is the heart and the soul. And the heart is the seat of knowledge. And Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that there is one piece of flesh inside the body, which if it is right, then everything is right. And if it is wrong, then everything is wrong. So actually, knowledge is learned from the heart, and knowledge is learned on the basis of experience. And these are two lessons which are not present in Western intellectual tradition at all. They reject the evidence of the heart, and they reject the existence of the soul, and they reject life experience as a basis for knowledge. And that means that all of the knowledge they have is built on the wrong foundations. So when we think about it in terms of what Descartes did, then you have to say that Descartes made a mistake. You see, if you really are doubting about your existence, then how will I learn about my existence? It's my primary experience. You see, if I close my eyes, I will sense the tingling of my skin. I will sense my heart beating. I will sense the blood flowing through my veins. So it's a direct experience. It's not my thinking. It's not my thought process. My thought process is very weak. I often think wrong thoughts and make mistakes. But even when I'm sleeping, I can experience this. When I wake up, I don't have any thoughts in my mind, but I have the idea, I have the feelings in my body. So this is how I know I exist. It's experience, which is direct, which is the basis of knowledge, not logic and reason. And actually, the ideas that you can get knowledge from reason, this is a fallacy, and we will discuss this in greater detail in later lectures. So what Ghazali says is that there is the experience, and then the experience of God is unmentionable. It cannot be described in language. So he refers to it by poetry and goes on. Now, a false accusation is made against Ghazali. It's very common. Many people say that, Ghazali blocked the path to reason because he rejected reason. So actually, Ghazali never rejected reason. He says that you cannot use reason to get to certainty. You have to start from basic foundational experiences and experience of God. Once you have these, then you can and should use reason, and you should trust in reason. And you cannot reject reason. So, but basically he limited the scope of reason, that you have to start with some foundations, and then you must use reason. If he says that if you use something which goes against reason, if you have some intuition, some ilham about something, and that is against reason, you should reject that. So the Ghazali works with limitations of reason, and he was actually arguing against the Mu'tazila, who said that reason is everything and reason is all important, and reason is parallel with wahi. So Ghazali did Tahafutul Falasifa to reject that reason can often make mistakes, but if reason and reason cannot be comparable to wahi. Now today, the problem we face is the modern Mu'tazila, who say that the Western sciences are on par with wahi. In the Ghazali's time, it was Greek philosophy which was being considered as par with wahi, and Greek philosophy turned out to be all wrong. All of their major beliefs turned out to be wrong. Today, the Muslims are arguing that Western philosophy and Western social science, this is all on par with wahi, and tomorrow we will learn that it was all wrong. So the failure of the Western intellectual tradition is because it's built on the wrong foundations, and all of the Western intellectual tradition is built on denying Ghazali. Ghazali says that, empiricism cannot lead you to logic, to knowledge, and rationalism cannot lead you to logic. But in fact, modern philosophy believes that, yes, we have the senses and we have the logic, and this is the sole source of knowledge. And this is fundamental fallacy and error in Western thinking. So, what are the results of this failure to build the proper foundations for the social sciences? Well, Isa alayhi salam, it is attributed to him in the Bible that you should judge a tree by the fruit it bears. If you look at the social sciences, has this social science done any good to the West? You find that today more than 50% of the children are being brought up by single parents in the West, not in the Islamic civilization, alhamdulillah. So think about a child. He has only mother, only parent, and everyone is busy with their own lives. They don't enjoy the love and comfort of a secure home. How can you have a good life if you don't even have the love of your mother and father and family and a comfortable nest in which to grow? I have personal experience with my American friends that one of my close friends, Paul Kinney, he committed suicide because his parents divorced each other and they couldn't take care of him. He was always looking for love, but he couldn't find it. And eventually he committed suicide. And so that's on a personal level. On a larger level, because greed and exploitation have become common because they have rejected morality. So the land, the sea, and the earth, everything has become polluted. Lots of species of flora and fauna have been destroyed. We're talking about the sixth extinction, where so much death and destruction has been carried out throughout the planet that the whole planet is changing because of the amal of the earth. And there is wars which are causing hundreds of thousands of deaths and conflicts and refugees and billions living under poverty. So all of this is the fruits of the social science. Allah Ta'ala has described this by Zahar al-fasada fil barri wal bahr bima kasabat aydin nas. So corruption has spread throughout the land because of the fallacious social science, the wrong idea about how we should build society that has been developed in the West and has been accepted by the Muslims on face value. So the Islamic foundations of knowledge are that there are two sources of certain knowledge. The Quran is absolutely certain. So this is the axiom. This is the beauty of Islam, that we can take the Quran as our axioms. You see, the West is searching for those axioms, but they cannot find them because there's no certainty. I think, therefore I am. This is just ridiculous and absurd. It's a childish mistake. When you say I, you have already said that I exist. So when you say I exist, I think, and therefore I exist, this is a stupid argument. And this is the father of Western philosophy, making stupid arguments because they have nothing else to do. How can you get to certainty? You cannot. Imam Ghazali showed that. So we are in the same boat. If we start from zero, we cannot get anywhere. So we take for certain on the basis of faith, and this is the nur of Islam, that the Quran is certain. Every word of it is true, and we don't have to doubt that. And that once you have this solid foundation, then you can build all knowledge about this. So Allah Ta'ala has shown his signs in the universe and inside ourselves. And Francis Crick, who was developer of the double helix model, he says that an honest man who studies biology, he will say that there must be some creator because it's so fantastic, it's so amazing, it's so complicated, it cannot be developed by random process. It is designed very carefully and complex design. So it is the sign of Allah, and even an atheist like Crick recognized this sign. So Quran says that you should rejoice in this Quran because it is better than everything that they gather. Now, the traditional interpretation of this ayah is that everything means all the materials, all the treasures, the wealth that the other people are gathering. But I think it is about all the knowledge. All of the knowledge that the West has gathered is nothing compared to what has been given to us in the Quran. So Islamic methodology is to take the Quran as certain. And now there's some very important personal experience that I would like to talk about, that often we find that the Quran is saying something, but our heart doesn't accept, our mind doesn't accept, because it's saying something which sort of goes against our ways of thinking. Why? Because our ways of thinking have been polluted by the West. So in such situations, what is often done is that we reinterpret the Quran. And this is a mistake. Instead, you must change your way of thinking and change your feelings. If the Quran says something and you don't like it, then change your heart and start to like it. Because the Quran is certain, what I think, what I feel, this is not certain. So I'm going to give one specific example. I had a debate with this. Allah Ta'ala says that Allah Ta'ala took us all out from and He created us before the creation of the earth, and He took a promise from us. He told us, He asked us, me, you, am I not your Lord? Alastu bi rabbukum? And we said, yes, you are. Now, I don't have any memory of this. So I actually, the Muslim arguing with me, and Allah Ta'ala says that why? He says He will tell us on Qiyamah, if somebody denies that the message never reached me, Allah Ta'ala will say, no, I told you this personally myself. So this man said, this is not fair. I don't remember it. So you see, he's rejecting the Quran. He says that I don't remember it, so I will not acknowledge. So how do we now? This is also how I thought. Yani I also thought this doesn't seem to be fair. If I made a promise to God, then I should remember it. I should have memory of it. If Allah Ta'ala has removed this memory, then it is not fair. But Allah Ta'ala is saying on Day of Judgment, He will say that I already told you this. So you cannot say that I didn't know. On Qiyamah, nobody has excuse to say I didn't know. But this is a contradiction. It doesn't match to my feeling. It doesn't match to my heart. So I said, okay, the Quran is true. What I'm thinking, what I'm feeling is wrong. So how can this be? So the solution is simple. Basically, the message of Allah Ta'ala is printed on our hearts. We are born with it. And if you cleanse the heart of the pollution, and this is also given in the hadith, that every human being is born on Deenul Fitrah, and then his parents make him Christian and they make him Jews. So the wrong type of education, which we have all received Western education, it can move us away from the Deen of Fitrah. If we clean this, we will come to the Tawheed, which is printed on our hearts. This is so, and that is the truth. And my feeling is not correct. So I will so when we are searching from knowledge, Islam teaches us that the real source of knowledge is Allah alone. Allah is Wahid, and all knowledge leads to Him. So we must ask. And a personal experience, I was stuck on a very difficult problem in mathematics in my own Ph.D. and I could find no solution. So I made dua. Allah Ta'ala made it easy for me, and even I cannot describe it. Again, there are some things which cannot be said, but I read an ayah of the Quran and it had the solution. I cannot explain. How can an ayah of the Quran solve a mathematical problem? I cannot explain it to you. But this is how it happens. And many other PhD students have told me similar experiences about this, that they were stuck in their PhDs and they could not make progress. And then they made dua and sadaqah and amal, and Allah Ta'ala opened their path to knowledge from them. So this is also mentioned in the hadith, that Allah Ta'ala grants a nur to the believers, and with this nur they can see through the darkness. So let us end this lecture with this dua. Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqan warzuqna ittaba'ahu wa arina batila batilan warzuqna ijtinabahu. Oh Allah Ta'ala, you can only guide us. There is no other guide. And if you do not guide us, we will surely go astray. And we are your ibad. And Allah Ta'ala, the Ummah is in darkness now and humanity is in darkness. Please grant us all the nur of your blessings and wisdom, and shine it in our hearts and make the knowledge that is desirable easy for us, and make us travel on the path of your raza. Jazakal alhamdulillah. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun al mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
MashaAllah, Jazakallah khair, Professor Asad Zaman, for a very insightful lecture. So it's really inspiring for me. So I hope everybody here also get the message from this lecture. I noticed there is a brother who already raised his hand from the first talk. So
yeah.
I will give opportunity for the brothers who are going to directly ask to our professor here. You can unmute yourself or raise your hand first. There is also question in the chat box. So while waiting for those who are going to ask directly, I will read the. Okay, so here, Brother Arafat. I will give opportunity first to Brother Arafat. Please, you can unmute yourself, brother.
Thank you very much, dear Professor, for your phenomenal presentation and nourishing our intellect. Prior to the lecture, I went through one of your articles relevant to today's discussion and topic, in which you have mentioned that there are some certain hidden assumptions in the methodology of social sciences that could be problematic for religion. And I definitely endorse this fact, and the same is the issue with the methodology of natural sciences. Natural sciences are based on methodological naturalism, which is a view that the universe can be understood through pure scientific laws without the intervention of supernatural. So even though almost majority of Muslim theologians as well as Christian theologians don't have any issue with the methodological naturalism and find it compatible with the theism, but I see it problematic as well because only general divine action and a concept of God and deism philosophy can be incorporated in this framework, but it leaves no space for special divine action, I mean miracles. Secondly, so therefore you need the felt to Islamize the social sciences, and you lead and advocate this project. But what do you really mean by Islamization of social sciences? Do you mean just to reform and modify the contemporary Western social sciences, which is just like the one of the proponents of the project, Al-Faruqi, holds the same view. And which approach would you prefer to achieve this goal? First, as you know that there are a lot of literature, numerous theories, concepts, and terminologies developed by social scientists who have spent their lives for the cause. And scholars as well as the common people are familiar with these concepts and are feel more comfortable and flexible with them. So don't you think it would be better to take these terms as a starting point toward the searching Quranic and Hadith concepts relevant to the subject, and later these terms will be gradually modified or replaced by other terms derived from the Quranic tradition? Or would you prefer the second approach, in which the Quran and its related terms and concepts can be directly used and will take directly to the Islamic frame of reference. But the main problem with this approach is that people are unfamiliar with the Quranic concepts and terminologies. They leave a big gap because Islamic scholarship has been stunned from the long period of time and disconnected from the terminologies developed over centuries.
Okay, thank you, Brother Arafat. Please, Prof, you can answer.
There were a huge number of topics covered, so I won't be able to answer everything, but let me just clarify. First of all, yes, physical sciences, social sciences, they all have their problems. So naturalism, but basically physical science is very different from social science. And what my meta goal here is to attack the idea that, Western intellectuals are, rocket scientists and we are nowhere and we are ignorant and they are educated. So the easy place to do this in social science, because that's the social science is built on such absurd assumptions that it is easy for even children to make a mistake, to see that they are wrong. Now, when we talk about physical sciences, even Einstein made blunders, but now to explain the mistake that Einstein made requires a lot of work and effort. And anyway, that has produced a lot of things that you can see. They have satellites and this computer and this internet. So all of this is products of science. So when we want to discuss about the problems of physical sciences, but they are very different from the type. So it's just a matter of strategy that we attack the easy goal first, and then we go after the difficult part. Now, as far as the Islamization of Knowledge project is concerned, some of the people, I don't want to criticize, they have done some very good work and they have opened the pathways. But in many implementations that I have seen, like for example, in the International Islamic University of Islamabad, which is where I live, the Islamization of Knowledge project has gone astray. And the reason is that there's a difference. The idea is that social science is basically sound, and we need to modify it a little bit in order to make it Islamic. And this is the same thing as, Islamic economics. You take modern economics and then you add zakat and subtract interest and you have Islamic economics. And similarly, you take modern banks and you just rename the interest to be the share and the profit, and then you have Islamic banking. So this kind of modification, this kind of Islamization of knowledge doesn't work. In this whole lecture, I've been saying that we have to rebuild on new foundations provided by the Quran. And now, is it true that we have to start from scratch, from zero? No, the fact is that we have a huge intellectual tradition, 1,000 years of Islamic civilization, where we have working models for how things are done. We have Waqf and we have other financial institutions. So basically, if we change the goals, you see, today we are all living in capitalist society and everything must go through the market. This is the key flaw. So if you want to make just one economic change that will change the world of Islam, we think of the Ummah as one body, and we make sure that every child has an equal opportunity to learn whatever he wants to do. So every child has the opportunity to develop his capabilities, and all of the children are equal. It is not that my child can study, but the other child can be hungry. All of the children are our children. We are like one body. So if we just make sure that every child has access to food, health, education, and we allow them to develop their potential, this will change the Ummah. Today we are living in a capitalist system. Everybody was only about his own family. And if their neighbor is starving, they don't care. This is very, very contrary to Islam. And so the idea of collective responsibility, farz-e kifaya, as a society, it is our collective responsibility to make sure that there is nobody hungry in our neighborhood. So, of course, this farz-e kifaya is too big for any one of us. But then the way the farz-e kifaya works is that you take care of what you can do. So, in your own mahalla, in your own neighborhood, that's why the rights of the neighbor are so important. So, you should know that there is nobody going to sleep hungry within 40 houses to the right and 40 houses to the left. And if you just do that, and if everybody does that, then there will be nobody hungry in the whole nation. So basically, these ideas are not the ones that you can find in Western social science, but these are the ideas which we can use to change society. And they're not difficult. They're not something, this is not like rocket science. You just make sure that the neighborhood is a living community, and you know about each other, and you're supposed to meet each other 5 times a day and ask the people about their conditions. Does somebody have a job? Is there a child with potential who needs an education? The mahalla as the neighborhood community should solve the problems of the community as a whole. So I think that's enough for that.
Mashallah, Jazakallah khair, Prof. There is one question from Brother Furqan here. So this is the first time he is listening to this kind of talk. So he is kind of shocked of learning, listening to this talk. So yeah, his question is, can you please explain on what went wrong for us in believing blindly on what being thrown us? So what went wrong if we just following the existing?
Yeah, that was basically, in short, you can say that it was the colonization, the process. In early 20th century, Europeans had control over about 90% of the Islamic lands, and the control is not physical; it's mental. So basically, what went wrong was the colonization of the minds. Our minds have been infiltrated by toxic admiration of the West. This is what Ibn Khaldun also said, that if some nation is conquered, then they become psychologically defeated and they start imitating the victors in all ways. So they start dressing like them, they start eating like them, they adopt their habits, they adopt their ways of thinking. So because of the global colonization by Europe, Muslims have started to think like Europeans, to act like Europeans, to dress like Europeans, to eat like Europeans. And basically that is the source of the problem. And so today we have to reject this. And why? Because we are in shock and awe. We think that the Westerners can do no wrong, they can think no wrong thoughts, and everything they say must be true. And this is the source of the problem. And so we have to explain why what they think about how to build society is wrong, and how we can build better society by using the basis of the Quran and the Sunnah and the heritage, the 1,000 years of Islamic civilization. No child was hungry and none was uneducated. So this.
Thank you, Prof. There is another question from Brother Fajar. So it's such a great lecture for hearing your lecture. So his question: if the heart is the source of knowledge and the purity of the heart also affect the knowledge, why do the non-believers seem gaining much knowledge in science more than us, the believers? What's wrong with us?
Yes. When our hearts become clouded, when you see, if you there is shukr, and the opposite of shukr is kufr, is to be non-grateful, to be ungrateful to the gifts of Allah. So if somebody, and you just think of a person, if somebody gives you some gift and you say, I don't like it, then he will not be, the person who is giving you the gift will be very angry with you. So Allah Ta'ala in the Quran, He says that He has given us the greatest gift that of knowledge to mankind. Now today, what are the Muslims doing? Are they looking to Allah Ta'ala for guidance, or are they looking to the West for guidance? So when Allah Ta'ala says, there is a hadith that if somebody has been given the gift of the Quran and he looks in some other direction for guidance, then he has done zulm to the gift that Allah Ta'ala has given him. So today all Muslims are doing this zulm. We have this Quran which gives us brilliant, absolute, complete and perfect guidance, but instead of asking the Quran to help us solve our problems, we are asking the Ph.D. from Harvard to help us solve our problems. And this is zulm, and that is the source of our problems today.
MashaAllah. Thank you so much for those who give the question, and also for Prof. Asad Zaman for giving us the clear answer. So thank you everybody for joining this session. We are going to the end of this talk because it's more 1 hour and a half. So, oh yes, those who are going to discuss the next month discussion, you can fill in the attendance link so that later on we can circulate the information. You also welcome to join our group. We have a WhatsApp group and also Telegram group to get update on our event, inshallah. So, Jazakallah khairan for Professor Asad Zaman for giving very inspiring lecture, and also those who are attending this Zoom platform, also those who are joining through our YouTube channel. So maybe for the concluding remark, do you want to share some concluding remark for the friends here, Prof?
Yes, actually we are having now, I am having basically monthly lecture in the Ghazali group and also a monthly lecture in a group in California and USA. And both of them are roughly, so these are being more or less in sequence. So those people, I would like for each group to listen to the other one, because that one is usually first Thursday or something like that. And this is like the third week or the last week, Sunday. So it's more or less every 2 weeks. So if you listen to them, then I'm developing the same theme throughout. So you can follow much more closely. And so if you join the WhatsApp groups or if you give your emails, then you can get the materials, and all the materials, the recordings, these will, everything, the slides, they will all be available through the channels. So,
thank you, Prof. Some brothers asking about the link of the group, so we are going to circulate the links in the group, inshallah. Also, if you see in the chat box, there is Brother Salva has shared about the link tree. You can click this link and you can join the group, inshallah. Yes, thank you so much. So maybe for this to give a summary of this talk. So I thank you so much for this very inspiring lecture from Prof. Asad Zaman. So the main objective of this talk is to give us, like the professor mentioned, to give awareness for us that we already have our Quran and our Sunnah, so that rather than we are seek the knowledge from the West, from the social science, and most of our time used to seek the knowledge from other, we need to see the legacy that we have, the intellectual tradition from our ulama, and also from the our previous the lecture that we get. Yes.
Heritage. And yes, most fundamentally, the nur of Allah. That's the basis of all knowledge.
Yes, inshallah. So
you can't get anywhere without that. This is one thing that the West does not know.
Yes, inshallah. So every time we learn, in the end of the day, it is about the implementation of the amal, right, Prof? So after we are getting the knowledge, we need also to reflect, yes, and also to try to start from ourselves to change. So inshallah, hopefully this session give benefit for those who are listening to this session, and see you inshallah in the next month. I end the session here. Sorry for any inconvenience, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you, Prof. Asad. Inshallah, see you.
Jazakallah
next month.
khair.
Jazakallah khairan, everyone.
Jazakallah.